I got one of Twitter's top tech meme lords, Nikita Bier, to write my newsletter. He's a 2-time exited founder and a former product leader at Facebook. So you might be wondering, is he too busy or too rich to write my newsletter? And the answer is yes, you are right about that. So what I did was create an AI clone of Nikita Bier using ChatGPT and a custom GPT that I created. It writes like Nikita Bier writes. So I sort of trained it on Nikita Bier's tweets and then got it to write my newsletter like it's Nikita Bier. So I'm going to show you a workflow that will help you to write and rewrite your content in different styles, different tones of voice, and like people that you might want to write like. And then in the second half of the video, I'm going to talk about how to basically scale this, create a workflow on it, and actually use this workflow to create an entirely new experience that wasn't possible before AI. So AI for marketing projects, largely in 2 buckets. One is doing existing marketing fundamentals with a higher ROI. And it's a higher ROI because you can lower the cost and improve the quality. So that, marketing fundamentals are things like content creation, emails, ads, all the essential things that are proven to achieve marketing goals and business goals. You can now use AI to do them at a higher ROI. And this channel is mostly focused on content operations and content creation using AI to do those things better. But increasingly on this channel, I'm going to start also incorporating entirely new experiences because, of course, AI is incredibly powerful technology and it's improving every day. You'll be able to use it to basically achieve the same goals, the same marketing and business goals, but entirely new ways. So you can achieve like far superior results. So I'm going to take this content, tone and style, writing and rewriting workflow and talk about doing real-time personalization at scale. So in other words, it's at scale because it's not just personalizing based on an industry or an ICP or even a target account, like account-based marketing, they're always doing personalization stuff there. But now with AI, you can do personalization on the person level. So you can actually personalize for an individual person. And the real-time component is AI will use data that's coming in real time, whether it be from interactions with your content or conversations on a sales call, and even pulling in data from third-party sources such as social media activity to then personalize your marketing campaigns to that individual person. So there's some really exciting new things that will be possible with the writing and rewriting workflow that I'm about to show you. I'm going to use a principle from Robert Cialdini, the godfather of persuasion. I'm going to use his principle called Unity to outline this real-time personalization at scale campaign. So why would I want to rewrite my newsletter in Nikita Bier's tone and style? So let me give you some context on what my goals are here, because it's very important when you're working with AI to make sure that you are sending it in the right direction. In other words, you're executing on things that can achieve your goals. AI can allow you to move like really, really fast and do things at a really, really high volume at a very, very low cost. But if those things aren't actually achieving your goals, it's completely useless. It might even be harmful. So let me tell you about like what my marketing goals are here, so you know why I would want to do this in the first place. And let me give you even like a bit more background. I know I've got some new subscribers to this channel, which is awesome. So I'll give you a little bit of my backstory. And initially, I know a lot of people were people that I already know and kind of already know my story. But basically, so why am I starting the AI Marketing Brief newsletter? How did I get here? So a little bit of my background. I've been in marketing for early stage startups, mostly B2B SaaS startups, for a little over 10 years. Been a co-founder, I've been an early employee, early marketing hire, and I've been a consultant to a number of different early stage SaaS startups. The company where I was an early employee exited in 2022. I co-founded a SaaS startup. After I left that company, that was a AI personal CRM company. That company failed, such as startup life. We got some raised some money, got some customers, all good, but just didn't really have a path to scaling, kind of couldn't create a big enough market for it. So beginning of last year, kind of started trying to figure out, what do I want to do next? What do I want to do next in my career? And, began playing around with AI, of course, and did some fractional consulting work for some startups as well. But, finally, after a lot of tinkering with AI, I have become fully bought in, fully convinced that this is the future of marketing. At first, I was very skeptical of AI. I did not think it would work. I was getting just really low quality outputs in terms of content from it. But after a lot of tinkering and figuring out actually how to use it, started getting really good results. And I'm like, wow, this thing is incredible. These models are not by any means perfect now, definitely need human intervention, but they keep improving. So it's just only a matter of time before, AI is like just a huge part of the future of marketing, is at least on the execution part of marketing and helping people to execute on the craft of marketing. Okay, so I'm committed to doing AI stuff, and then I decided to focus on AI for marketing because that's what I know. I spent my career basically in marketing, so that's what I know. How can I use AI for marketing and then create a business around that? So I've basically been testing out a number of different business ideas and a number of different solutions to kind of like related problems in the AI for marketing space. I have tested out, and I still am testing out, 2 different SaaS products, 2 media properties, including this one that you're watching now, Content Engineering Lab on YouTube, and 1 service business. And so seems like I'm a little unfocused now, and that is true. And that's sort of by design because I want to test out, see what there's a market need for, and then go and, go all in on like 1, maybe 2 of those things. At this point, I am pretty convicted on doing media. It seems like the best opportunity for me, B2B media, about AI for marketing. And so, of course, this channel, it will be a big part of that. And then I decided to test out a newsletter. And so that is AI Marketing Brief. So trying a different platform, slightly different solution. So Content Engineering Lab is mostly focused on content marketing, and it's mostly focused on B2B. I might branch out later, but I'm always happy to iterate on these ideas, of course. And then AI Marketing Brief is just, marketing broadly and no distinction between B2B or B2C. So my goal is to use these content properties, including this AI Marketing Brief newsletter, to market and sell my software and service businesses if and when I decide to pursue them. And then 2, to actually gain sponsorships. So actually like build a highly targeted audience and then sell ad space and sponsorships to companies that are interested in reaching that audience. So, standard media business model. But either way, I imagine most of you are probably like marketers for companies. It's sort of the same process either way, which is like you need to deliver a newsletter that's of value to people and you need to get them to open it. So if you want to sell them something, the first thing you need to do is get them to sign up for your emails and then open your emails and read your emails. And so why am I doing this writing style workflow? And the answer is because I think one of the key pieces to getting opens, engagement within the emails, and referrals is the style of the writing. So I think there's sort of 2 pieces to it. There's the substance. In other words, they're getting content that is valuable and entertaining to them. And then it's written in a style that makes it easy and fun to read. Okay. So how do I grow a newsletter audience and how do I make sure that audience is engaged? Of course, there's like top of funnel growth, but the writing style component is what I'm covering on this video, and which I believe is a very key variable to making this a success. So I basically spun up this, you can almost call it like a prototype or an MVP. Frankly, I set this up in like half a day, like maybe 5 hours. It took me to do, very basic branding, logo, color scheme, fonts, name, subtitle. And these are all things that are pretty important in terms of conversion rates on the page. So I spun this up, and then I'm going to probably iterate on it and upgrade on it once I prove there's like some basic demand for this like very basic level, offer and pretty straightforward copywriting. I can upgrade once I know, okay, there's a need here and I can solve that problem. And so far it looks like I'm doing that. It looks like I'm able to get subscribers for about $250 a subscriber roughly. And so that's, low enough where it signals to me that this can be a real business and that it can drive revenue for me, and that I'll be able to actually lower that cost over time. So anyways, so I'm getting enough traction. And so now I'm like, all right, let me make sure this content is really amazing, right? Okay. So along with like branding and like, it's almost like product development for content. It's just like, what should this newsletter sound like? And I decided I wanted to go with like more of like a fun and friendly vibe. Content Engineering Lab. This YouTube channel is a little bit more of like a practical, hands-on, let me show instead of telling. It's like, how do you actually do stuff? Like, let's get in the weeds. Let's talk about copywriting. Let's talk about persuasion. Let's talk about how to actually use AI to execute on these things. Whereas I want AI Marketing Brief to be more inspiring, kind of like showing people what's possible with AI. I want to show people like what's the latest news, what's happening, what are the latest developments in the field, what are new trends that are popping up, what are new marketing ideas, new tools, things like that. So it's a little bit inspiring, but I also want to just like keep it light and fun. I just kind of want to have it be a fun vibe. So I thought about like, okay, what does that actually look like? How do I actually do that? And frankly, like I don't actually write in that style very much. Like a lot of the companies I've been working for have been like much more like strategic, like even like a little bit more technical. And so you're not really going for like the fun vibe as much. And so I'm like, I don't even know if I could write in this. So I'm like, all right, let me find people that write like this. And Nikita Bier is certainly one of them. As you can see, he's over 300,000 followers and he goes viral just absolutely all the time. So the workflow I used here is to have ChatGPT analyze Nikita's writing and then analyze it and communicate it to me in such a way that I can basically input that into a prompt. And so I have a custom GPT that I use that does the analysis and prompt writing, which I'll show you. And then in this first case, I actually had it rewrite the content. So let's dive in. And first off, I'm going to start by just showing you the examples that I fed ChatGPT, the examples of Nikita's writing. And what I did is actually handpicked the exact posts of his that I liked and that I want to have my newsletter write in the style of, because most people, they like write all different kinds of posts. Like sometimes they're doing sales pitch, sometimes they're doing product announcements, sometimes they're doing funny content, sometimes they're doing educational content. And Nikita Bier is no different. He has lots of different content. So I didn't want to just like mass scrape and like import all of his content. I wanted it to be a lot more curated because again, and I was willing to spend the time on this because again, I believe that the style of the newsletter writing is going to be extremely important. And I also wanted to learn, like, why do people love Nikita so much? Why is he so funny? Like, I wanted to actually learn about what he's doing from a copywriting perspective. So it was really helpful for me to just go and do this exercise. So that's kind of another benefit of this workflow is like, you can go in and like, when you find good writing or effective writing that's performing well, or just writing that you like, you can go use this workflow and actually learn about the copywriting. This workflow is also great if like you're writing, if you like write a rough draft or even like some like rough notes that is, it's okay, but not great. And you just want to like completely like change up the writing altogether and get some like entirely new ideas about how you could craft this content. This is a great way to do it. And, but I'm using it to actually like sort of craft my brand voice and to actually execute on the actual content creation. So you can use this for a lot of different ways. All right, so let's jump in. So I'm using my writing style analyzer GPT. Basically the way it works is all you have to do is input just the raw text that you want it to analyze, and it will then give you the analysis. And that analysis can essentially be used to put directly into a prompt to get it to write content in the style of the piece that you analyzed. So I fed it a bunch of Nikita Bier's tweets, and again, like the ones that I specifically liked and that I wanted to write my newsletter in the style of. And I think it's really useful to actually go through and like read some of the tweets and some of the analysis, because I really think in the age of AI, like the craft of marketing is going to be super important. You need to be able to tell AI what to do. You don't necessarily want to rely on ChatGPT to tell you what kind of craft, what kind of technique you want it to use. It might get better at that in the future. That's a very real possibility. But for now, what you want to be doing is telling it what specific techniques, tone, style, et cetera, you want it to be using. And so the way to do that is to learn more about copywriting and tone and style and things like that. And I think that's going to be like a huge value add for marketers, whereas like the execution part will be still automated. And then, going back to that like second bucket that I talked about earlier, like how do you create a new experience? Well, it starts with like marketing fundamentals and like understanding like general marketing best practices and crafts. So in this case, like I'm using Robert Cialdini, like that's sort of like a tried and true principle. Now let's apply that to do something completely different. In other words, like content achieves certain marketing goals and business goals. And now we can achieve those same marketing and business goals in like an entirely different way, but we need to actually have good ideas on how to do that. And so like understanding marketing fundamentals such as Robert Cialdini and other like copywriting best practices is going to help you to do that. So let's go in. And if this is too in the weeds for you, just fast forward a few minutes and we'll get back to the content creation workflow. And after that, we'll talk about the real-time personalization at scale idea. All right. So Nikita says, anytime an engineer demos a feature to me that is very buggy and half-assed, I say, very nice, very Upwork. And they fix it faster than you can ever imagine. So, what do I think about it? We'll see, what do I say? And then what's ChatGPT's analysis? Because you always want to be communicating with ChatGPT in the way that it understands, not the way that you understand, especially especially when it comes to writing style, because it is kind of subjective. People think about things in different ways. The reason why I love this is, there's a little bit of a personal casual tone, half-assed, of course. It's you don't expect to see that in a business. And I just think it's kind of funny. It kind of grabs your attention. So that's kind of the tone I'm going for. Maybe not that extreme, but it's pretty cool. And then he said, I like how he says, very nice, very Upwork. He doesn't say that it's bad. He gives you a specific example, and that example creates a visual. At least if you've had experience working with a low quality Upwork. Of course, there's great people on Upwork, but sometimes you don't get always the best results. So he said it's very Upwork. So instead of giving you a concept or a description or opinion, he just gives you a tangible example, almost like an analogy, which makes it easier for people to understand, and it's a little bit more memorable as well. So ChatGPT says the tone is sarcastic and slightly critical. So I like this sarcastic component. Humorous, active voice. Yeah, so those terms I mentioned is informal and colloquial. Yeah, buggy too is that's a good one. It's instead of saying it doesn't work that well or something, he just says it's buggy. And as long as you're in tech, you get what that means. Casual tone, relatable, syntax, straightforward, simple sentences. Yeah, I definitely want to go for clarity. I want it to be easy to read. I want it to be simple. I want to take this complex technical subject of AI and just make it fun, easy to understand. Here's the next one. You and your ragtag team of engineers likely won't be able to create something that is competitive with any big incumbent. However, you can build features, seed content, and brand it away that is so obnoxiously relevant for a particular group of people that their only possible reaction is, well, F, you got me. I have to download this now. So I think this is cool. Instead of explaining what the group of people feels, thinks, or does, he tells you what they say. So it just makes it more tangible and more fun. And of course, he says it in a in a fun way. He doesn't. It's not just I need this. It's you got me. I have to download this now. And this is all a way of educating and giving a tip, which is to narrow down your audience. And this is a cool way to do copywriting here. So he says, Airbnb was initially a way to find air mattresses to sleep on while at design conferences. So again, it's a specific context, and says, now use it to rent a castle in the south of France. So it's that's very tangible. It's very visual, extremely visual. And it's just much better than saying you can rent nice places anywhere in the world. He says, no, it's specific. It's a castle in the south of France. You can picture it. Syntax, a mix of complex and compound sentences that balance detail with readability. And here's the imagery, as I mentioned, used to highlight transformation and potential, particularly in the example of Airbnb. Yeah, and so prompting ChatGPT to use imagery, it will actually use imagery. Perspective is second person, directly addressing the reader and placing them in the scenario. So this is an engaging, so perspective or point of view is first person, second person, third person. This is going to have a pretty big impact on a writing, and you'll have to decide what is right for you given the piece that you're writing. Yeah, good structure, logical flow. Okay, here's another one. Zuck had one deep insight in 2004, that college men were too afraid to ask for a girl's phone number and that they'd prefer to just friend them on Facebook. So again, specifically doesn't say college men were shy or having trouble socializing. He says, what specifically were they having trouble doing? And you can picture this, too afraid to ask for a girl's phone number. It's, you can picture the situation. And then, with him posting photos now a jacked fitness influencer, again, you can picture it. How to prepare yourself for the greatest product development cycle of the world has ever seen. So obviously a little bit of hyperbolic, but maybe not actually. This might actually be true. Yeah, I mean, this is just a great way. He doesn't just give you a direct tip. It's not just a direct and instructive thing where he's saying dog food your own product. That's sort of the lesson here. He's saying he does this in an extremely interesting structure and using really interesting language. So he has varied sentence structures, so balancing simpler statements with more complex compound sentences. So this is really interesting. So the simpler statements, shorter sentences are generally easier to read, so it improves clarity. That's great. When you vary it, it kind of like grabs your attention. So you get used to reading one way and then like, oh, here's this big long sentence, and it kind of makes that longer sentence stand out, and it grabs your attention. It almost gives like the content like a rhythm. I know that sounds like a little bit subjective. You don't get bored because you're not always getting the same thing. You're getting different things as you go, and that just keeps your attention. So that's a very cool copywriting strategy there. So here's giving advice that if you can do a big exit, go for it. And then he says, life is a ladder. You should feel no guilt getting your feet on the first rung before making others even richer. So this is a metaphor, and metaphors can be extremely powerful because it's talking about something that we've all experienced. It's much more relatable, and it's visual, which is stepping onto a ladder. Almost everyone's done that, but not almost everyone has had the opportunity to sell a company for life-changing money. So this helps explain his advice and why it's valuable in a much clearer way than just giving you the advice. So great stuff here. Here's a cool one. So before launching a product, sit down and draft a murder board. So this is kind of like original language, and it kind of wraps a concept into one word. So he explains what the concept is. So list out every possible criticism with the worst headline possible. So if you say that, that sounds kind of abstract. It's sort of unclear, but when he starts it with this murder board that kind of like sums up what that is, it's a lot easier to understand. And it's also, of course, like funny and memorable. So that's always a great thing to do with content. Here's a funny one. The greatest trick that venture funds played on entrepreneurs is to make it seem glamorous to spend your most youthful years having meetings with middle managers while you patiently wait for a liquidity event that will arrive when you're old, overweight, ugly, and in the market for a minivan. So this is like, hilarious. Again, like, I just love that it's specific and visual. So you can picture yourself in meetings with middle managers, and you can picture an overweight, ugly guy in the market for a minivan. So he doesn't just say like, oh, you have kids and you're older and you're like, living a more standard life. He gives you gives you the scene. The best thing you can tell a designer is to go full casino mode when they brainstorm. So he doesn't just tell the designer to be tacky or cheesy or attention grabbing or like bright, shiny lights. He just says full casino mode. So he gives it like a name, like a wrapper, like I was saying before. And it's visual. You can picture walking into a casino and the types of thing. Everything's trying to grab your attention. Everything looks fun. There's lots of action. It's just like a good way to explain it. So here's using contrast. There's two types of growth people in tech. Of course, this is overgeneralizing, but it's easy to understand one thing when it's in relation to another. So he says micro-optimizing cocaine-fueled finance adjacent A/B tester. So just a hilarious way to put that. Step function is right less than half the time. What's an A/B test? Viral K-factor guy. So just like putting it in like hyperbolic and specific terms. Zuck is incredibly good at throwing his weight behind something at the precise moment his products begin to lose relevancy. He never misses the next train. So a great metaphor that, you might have missed one train, but you're definitely not going to miss the next one. So his product might be beginning to lose relevancy, but now he's going to jump on the next big thing. Yeah. And by the way, another good thing that Nikita Bier has going for him is like, he worked at Facebook as a product leader. He's sold 2 companies. So he has credibility on these topics, but also his copywriting is just incredible. A startup ends when recurring weekly meetings begin. So instead of just like a boring tip of like, don't do weekly meetings, don't do too much process, don't have too much bureaucracy in your startup. It's a little bit hyperbolic, like a startup ends. Does it really just die because of weekly meetings? No, but it's just a very funny way to explain a concept. If you've ever hosted a webinar, your spouse is having an affair. As someone who has hosted webinars in the past, a long time ago, I find offense to this, but it is a funny way to say like, don't be boring in your marketing. Don't do boring marketing. But he says it in a lot more interesting way, of course. Every seed deal I did where the founder got drunk on fundraising. That's just great language. Instead of just saying they raised too much money, he said they got drunk on fundraising. Here he incorporates a personal story. This probably wouldn't be as relevant for my newsletter, but could definitely be relevant for like doing social content. And so he says from his company Gas, to complete and sign up a profile on Gas, we got it down to 15 taps total. So sharing personal experiences and accomplishments is very good. It makes it more relatable and more credible. Every time I tweet something niche and esoteric about making apps, I get no engagement and 3 new billionaires following me. Every time I tweet a banger, I get texts from high school friends about seeing my tweet on Instagram and crisis PR firms reaching out to see if I need help. So hyperbolic, specific, visual, tangible. It's not just conceptual. It's not just a direct tip. It's also a personal story. He's talking about what he does. Yeah, so perspective here is first person. All right, so just in this same thread now, I just say, based on all the samples I've sent you and your analysis of them, please write a summary of the writing style, including the most common elements used. So I'll give you a little rundown on this, and then this is what I use to then have it rewrite my newsletter in this style. So this is kind of the summary of it. Tone, humorous, cynical, and reflective. And I tried another version later on where I edit this a little bit to focus on the elements that I like most and that I most want to go for. So it's not necessarily that you want to just directly copy somebody else's stuff. You want to take elements that you like and maybe mix and match and kind of craft your own prompts based on this. Voice, active and confident. Varies between informal and business oriented. So yeah, that's definitely what I'm going for with my newsletter. It's somewhat technical, business, tech, trends, but I just want it to be informal and fun. Colloquial language. Syntax generally features straightforward constructions, right? And that's what I want. I want it to be simple and clear, but it does vary to include both simple and complex sentence structures like I talked about earlier. Imagery. So this is kind of the huge one that obviously stands out to me. Imagery is often used creatively to strengthen the communication of ideas, particularly when discussing abstract concepts or critiques. This includes both direct visual imagery and metaphorical language, which helps to vividly paint pictures or evoke emotions, making the abstract more tangible. So that's exactly what I want to do. I think that's really a fun, cool writing style. It's also persuasive and memorable. So at this point, I've had the Writing Style Analyzer GPT analyze a number of writing samples from Nikita Bier and give me that analysis in the frame of a prompt. And so now what I do is have it actually rewrite a newsletter. So in this case, I'm just getting this newsletter off the ground. I wanted to go through and write it myself so I know what I'm actually automating. So I went ahead and so it's a collection of links, different types of links. There's news, there's tools, there's a prompt, there's resources, interviews, an original AI 101, what is an agent piece of content, right? So I went through and wrote this myself, but I wrote it in a very boring way. I wrote it to be just the facts intentionally, so then I can just rewrite over and over again in a bunch of different styles. And I did this in other people's styles after this. And so what I did is just paste this original draft. And here is my prompt. Please rewrite the following newsletter below in the same style as the writing samples in this chat. And I just sent over the newsletter. And it rewrites the newsletter and incorporates the copywriting techniques and the writing style and tone techniques that I just covered right in the newsletter. And it's formatted and structured in exactly the same way. It's exactly the same content, exactly the same substance, just written as if it's Nikita Bier. Now, I still did editing. I still did a bunch of editing. I could show you the finished product. It's a little bit different than this, but we can see, just looking at this, that it incorporated a lot of the stuff. So let's say, he calls this, the AI calls this the inaugural flight. So kind of a metaphor, strap in. Today's dispatch is a treasure trove, right? So another metaphor. So this is a set of news stories about open source LLMs from Snowflake and from Meta. And so the AI calls it a slugfest. So it doesn't just say that they're competing. It says it's a slugfest, throwing down the gauntlet, a little bit hyperbolic, of course, kind of like Nikita Bier would do. Here's one really cool thing I really liked. So I share a prompt that Kieran Flanagan, the CMO of Zapier, shared to craft a campaign like Robert Cialdini. So I thought this was just super cool to call it Cialdini's spells. And so instead of a persuasion principle or an influence principle, it's a spell. So I just thought that was really cool. And anyway, so the ChatGPT just came up with a bunch of really cool ideas and did this in a completely different style that I probably couldn't have done on my own. It's very different than a lot of the writing that I do. And so, the old way of writing a piece of content or writing a newsletter is to get a writer, either freelance or in-house or content marketer in-house or whatever marketer or the founder, the subject matter expert that you're turning into the thought leader in your team, you have to, they do it. So the bottom line is like getting a writer who can write in the tone and style and use the copywriting techniques that you want to do, which is actually quite hard. So the best writers are actually really, really expensive, and they're usually booked because they already have clients because they're so good at writing. So that ends up being like a huge gating factor for doing really good marketing work. And especially for like agencies, when you're doing like a very high volume of content, like the bottleneck ends up being the writers as much as like new clients or anything else. Especially if you're an agency and you're like going into a new market. Like, and I actually briefly did like agency work several years ago. And for example, like did some B2C stuff, like skincare stuff. And so it's like, so now you need a writer that can write in like a completely different tone and style than you even know. And so you would have to go out and recruit a writer, and that takes a lot of time, and you have to pay them a lot of money and all this stuff. And now with ChatGPT, you can just get writing in the style that you want it to be in, have it analyze it, and have it write for you. And like for me, like I'm creating my content strategy for my newsletter. And so it's like, instead of just like talking theoretically about what the content strategy is, like you can just do the content in all these different voice and tones and see what works and what you want to do with like actual tangible examples instead of just like talking about it theoretically. So this is like incredibly powerful. Now to do this, like, again, like the goal is I want to write this in a style so that it helps my newsletter perform well. How do I actually test that? Well, in this case, it's actually hard to like run a structured, quantifiable experiment for this. So like, how would you actually measure that this is going to work really well? In this case, I think it's going to have to actually be qualitative. It's going to have to rely on feedback because there aren't necessarily metrics that you could track in this case. So it's like over time, my open rates should increase partially because of the style, but there's also a bunch of other factors that influence open rates. Like, was it the substance of the newsletters? Was it the subject line? Was it that I'm attracting a better audience, that the top of funnel growth is actually more relevant people? So it's really hard to tell, are there more referrals? But then again, with like referrals, it's like, are they referring it because of just this specific writing style? Or are they referring because they have been getting value from the newsletter for months? So it's very hard to like test this on a quantitative basis. It is a little bit of opinion based and kind of takes some judgment, which, again, I think that's the real value of marketing now in the AI age. But you can also get qualitative feedback from readers. So I'm excited to do that. So, as far as this newsletter, I edited it and shipped it, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. How do we turn this into something like bigger and better? So obviously this is like, hey, how do we execute on fundamentals more efficiently and more effectively? And that's great. And I'm definitely going to keep covering that on this channel. That's great. But I think there's a bigger play and a bigger opportunity here to create an entirely new experience. So right now, content is kind of this like one-way communication where it's like, I write about what I think you want to read about in the style that I want to do it, or that I can do it, or that I think you want, right? And so it's just this like one-way communication. So maybe in the future, content is actually two-way and personalized. So maybe instead of me just talking, instead of me as the marketer, I'm just talking at somebody. Now maybe I can listen and react and then talk. So maybe instead of like a blog of static data, like here's the blog post that we offer, maybe all the blog is completely customized for every individual visitor on the page, and it's written in the style that they want. Or maybe instead of having somebody listen to a podcast one way, now they can ask questions and have like an AI avatar of me then talk about what they actually want to hear. Or maybe we use a product like Hume, which recently raised a $50 million Series B to release their new, what they're calling an empathetic voice interface, which can actually interpret the emotions of humans. Maybe we use something like that. So now our intro, SDR, BDR calls, intro demos, qualification calls, whatever your sales process is, maybe now the tone and style of those conversations completely customized in real time based on the individual person on the call. So if this person is going into the weeds on specific features and talking about what they want to achieve and what they want to do, now maybe the tone and style shifts to instructive and direct. And here's how you do this, right? Or maybe the person, the prospect is maybe just trying to learn more about the category. Maybe they don't know that they have a problem that you solve. So now you want to talk more in terms of like big picture and like, sharing a point of view on the category, talking about the future, being like inspiring. And so that's like a completely different tone and style. So there's some really cool stuff you can do here, obviously. When it comes to like content, like here's like a cool like real-time personalization idea is like pull in data about the person, either what they've consumed on your site or what they're engaging with on social media, and then write your content in the tone and style that they want. So you keep your messaging and the substance of your content the same, but now it's written in a way that that they want to hear about it. So maybe they follow and engage with Nikita Bier. So you can write in the tone and style of Nikita Bier, or maybe they engage with, Chris Walker, and now you can do it in the tone and style of Chris Walker. And everything can be completely customized for the specific person. And then like another cool way to think about this is like we could take the principle, Robert Cialdini's principle of unity, which basically says that people are more likely to do business with people that are similar to them. So like, here's kind of like a crazy idea, which is like, maybe you find out that the person is from Boston because that information may be available online, or they live in Boston. It says on their LinkedIn profile that they live in Boston. Well, now maybe when they get on a call with your AI SDR salesperson, maybe that AI SDR salesperson has a Boston accent. So now, that person, the prospect feels unity with your team because you're similar to each other. And look, like, right now the workflow that I just showed you is completely possible. And, some of this like real-time personalization stuff that I'm talking about is not necessarily possible right now. But look, like news this week is Sam Altman saying it's worth spending $50 billion a year to get to AGI. And he says that GPT-4 is the dumbest model that you're ever going to use. So these models are just going to keep getting stronger and stronger, and things are going to be possible. There's all kinds of startups getting funded. Startups like Hume, Y Combinator is full of AI startups, incredibly smart founders like building AI products. So all this stuff is going to get really more and more powerful. So it's incredibly exciting. But, for now, this is a workflow that you can use to create prompts in your writing style to create original content or to rewrite your content. So my goal longer term with this newsletter is to automate as much as possible of the entire operation. And so right now I'm starting with the content creation part of it. The content sourcing part of it, I think I'm not going to automate very much because I think the getting really good substance into the newsletter is extremely important and somewhat hard to do actually so far based on recent experiments. So I think I'm going to personally curate the links that are included, but I'm going to focus on the content creation part. And so the next step in fully automating this process will be to go with the agent model, which is to have very specialized prompts to do specific parts of the newsletter as opposed to just writing the entire newsletter. So have a prompt to write subject lines, have a prompt to write different kinds of content that I include in here. So for example, I include like news, and news should be written in one tone and style. And then I have like resources like podcasts, and those should be written in another tone and style and format and structure. And maybe there's going to be, different format and structure here, like bullet points. So, and then maybe there's like a reviewing, editing, rewriting agent that does that. So every piece, there may be like 5 to 10 different like prompts that I use to write this newsletter over time. It'll be just an agent that takes action on all of it. And so that's kind of the next step. But, like I said, first step is like getting the content strategy, including the writing style and tone down right. So that's what this video has been all about. And I will keep you posted on further automation of this newsletter in future videos. And by the way, this is a similar, automating the newsletter content creation is similar to how you would automate other forms of content creation like social content or blogs. And I hope this is helpful. So let me know what you think of this episode. Let me know if you want to hear more about like the future of AI for marketing and like where things are going and like creating new experiences with AI, or if you want to more of like the like practical in the weeds. How do we execute and create high performing content using AI? Let me know what's more interesting. Thanks for watching.